Hello everybody and welcome to the first tutorial for LightLink, a nifty little piece of software designed to give you full control over your home RGB lighting, like Nanoleaf Aurora, Canvas, and Shapes panels. So without further ado, let's get started. So what exactly is the purpose of LightLink anyways? Well, maybe you've been to a festival or a concert or a club and wondered, how did they get the lighting to do so much cool stuff in perfect synchronization with the music? And how come my lighting fixtures at home running off of a sound reactive algorithm generally just don't look as cool? Well, the reason is that a lighting designer is using a protocol called DMX to control his stage lighting. Now, DMX has become ubiquitous for controlling stage lighting all around the world, but there's just one problem. Our home lighting fixtures like Razer peripherals, Nanoleaf panels, and Philips Hue bulbs generally don't play so nice with DMX if they play at all. So the purpose of LightLink is to give you, the user, the tools that you need to create those same compelling stage lighting shows, but for your living room. Now, whether you're a beginner or you've already downloaded LightLink, I'm going to start from the beginning and we're going to cover the nuts and bolts of what it takes to create compelling lighting scenes and cues and how to sync them perfectly with your music on Spotify. Let's get started by downloading LightLink and becoming familiar with the user interface. Navigate to GoLightLink.com and install the desktop application. From there, navigate to the Resources section of the web page. Download and install Audacity and one of the clipboard management tools. Lastly, download Keys by Feather and Stephen K. This is the music track we're going to be using to create our first lighting scenes. Feather and Stephen K were nice enough to let us use their song for the purposes of this tutorial. I'll go ahead and link their social media profiles below. Go ahead and throw them a like and a follow. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Okay, now that we've got LightLink downloaded and installed, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and open up LightLink. And you'll be prompted to log in with your credentials. And you should get a pop-up window from Spotify asking you to log into your Spotify Premium account. I'm going to do that. And you'll notice that you get a notification from LightLink, just letting you know that the Spotify linking process is complete, but also note that this window has to be left open. So what we want to do is minimize this window instead of closing it. And the next order of business is going to be connecting our Nanoleaf panels to LightLink. So the way to do that is by clicking the Search for Light Systems button. And you'll note that underneath the Light Systems dropdown, it's populated Aurora. That's my particular setup, and the IP address as well. So in order to link my panels to LightLink, what I have to do is walk over to my Nanoleaf power supply, and I want to press down and hold on the power button until the status light begins to flash. It takes about 4 to 5 seconds or so. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And once that status light begins to flash, you want to go ahead and click the Connect to this system button. And you'll see the panels just change to color to let me know that the linking process was successful. In addition to the number of panels being displayed, that looks correct. I've got 30 panels. But underneath that, we've got the panel IDs. Now, if I select a panel ID, that particular panel associated with that ID will illuminate on my setup. This is pretty cool. I'm going to show you. Okay, so there's panel 63. And as I navigate down the drop-down list, you'll see that each panel associated with that ID reflected in the drop-down list illuminates. And we've got these arrows over here, the up and down arrows. What those arrows do is allow you to switch up the orientation and the order of your panels. Now, This is probably less apparent with my setup because my setup is relatively linear in this triangle design, but your setup might have more complicated and intricate branches that go off in different directions and such. And this is important because as we're going to build chase animations depend heavily upon the orientation and the order of the particular panels in order to create a nice cohesive chase. So if you need to reorder your panels, you can do that using these arrows here. And now I'd like to steer your attention away from the Nanoleaf connector box to the top left-hand portion of your screen. It's a yellow box, and this box is primarily used for organizational purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the features here. Underneath the Saved Scenes dropdown, you'll see a list of all the various scenes that I've created in LightLink. Now, as you continue to use LightLink over time, the number of scenes that you save is going to grow exponentially, and you might have hundreds or even thousands of scenes after a while. And it becomes a bit of a task trying to keep these scenes organized so that you can recall them in the future for editing or for using in other pieces of music. So let's say that I've got multiple scenes created for a particular part of a song, in this case, the drop. I'm gonna go ahead and select that. And let's say I'd like to keep all my drop scenes organized. So anytime I have a drop in the future, I can go back and recall all the scenes that I've made previously and maybe use those scenes for inspiration or something of that sort. So I'm gonna go ahead and tag this scene as a drop. Save the tag. And I'm gonna select my other drop scene. Tag it and save it. And you'll see that tag that I just made is populated to the left over here. And if I select that tag and go back to the Saved Scenes dropdown, you'll see the two scenes that I've tagged are now populated in that dropdown list, and the other scenes that haven't been tagged are now omitted. So this is a nifty little way to sort of keep track of all the scenes that you've made and keep them organized. And you'll see to the right, we actually have the same functionality for songs. So underneath my songs dropdown, all these songs that are in monochrome color are songs that were added by the official LightLink account. And for me as a user, you can see the songs that I've added appear in green. If I move my mouse away. So this one song here, Keys, is the song that I've added. And let's say that I've got multiple songs by a particular artist, in this case, Feather. What I can go ahead and do is tag this song with the artist name and save it. And my tag appears underneath this drop-down list. And if I select that tag, you'll see the one song that I've tagged appears underneath that drop-down list. So that's sort of a neat way to keep track of everything because you'll see as you use LightLink over time and keep creating programming, if you're not careful, your scenes and your songs can start to grow and just get out of control. So underneath here, underneath the Save Song Tags button, we've got Song Scenes. Now, all of these scenes here, everything in this list, each one of these items represents a scene that I've saved for this particular song. So if I want to go ahead and click one of these, let's say this one, it's a chase scene. The parameters for that particular scene are populated beneath in this green box here. And you can go ahead and tick this play scene trigger. And you'll see the animation for that scene that we've created plays back in real time. So what you can do from here is make some changes, make some edits, and you can save as new. And this is a nice way to save some time so you're not constantly building scenes from scratch. Let's say you've got a strobing scene that you would like to repurpose for a different song, but you just want to change the color and you want to keep all the other parameters the same. Well, it's as simple as navigating up to the saved scenes drop down and selecting whatever that scene may be. So in this case, I've got like a white strobing scene. Now, if I wanted that to be green, then I would change the color. Now I've got a green strobe, and I could simply rename this and save as new. So that saves a little bit of time in the workflow process as you're creating scenes and tweaking and making little minor variations over time. Okay, moving on to the purple Spotify Watcher window. So what this window is primarily used for is establishing a connection with Spotify. So once you click the Start Watching Spotify button, LightLink is going to start paying attention to your Spotify account. And if you start playing a song, if there's programming that you've created in LightLink to go with that song, it'll start playing it. But if you don't want LightLink to pay attention to Spotify, let's say you just want to create some programming for lighting scenes and you want to listen to Spotify at the same time, but you don't want the scenes to play back, then you simply just don't click the Start Watching Spotify button, and then LightLink won't play back any of the lighting commands. Now, these two links up here above, to the left and right, these are clickable links, and they take you to our LightLink official playlist on Spotify. So I'm going to go ahead and click one of these. And you can see we've got LightLink Premium here. And these are all the songs that the official LightLink account has programmed. And you can play back any of them, and you'll see that the animations start to play back. So I'm going to pick one here, Blinding Lights. Okay, so you can see that what LightLink has done is it's picked up on Spotify, and it started to play back the lighting commands in synchronization with the music. And this is reflected down here underneath the command time. You can see in real time the commands that were programmed, and you can watch them play back. Now, you'll also notice, here, I'm going to go ahead and stop this song. You'll also notice a drop-down list that says Sync Adjust. Now, Sync Adjust is primarily used for creating little adjustments in the playback time of the lighting commands with the music. And the reason this is important is because Bluetooth audio systems introduce an inherent lag, and that lag isn't necessarily consistent. It varies from system to system, depending upon what kind of Bluetooth speaker you have. So in order to compensate for that lag, what you can do is bump your lighting commands by a designated amount. Whether you want them to be early or you want them to be late, you can take care of that in the Sync Adjust drop-down. And actually, there's a great tool for determining that. Let me navigate back here to the Premium playlist. You'll see there's a song in the playlist that's simply called Metronome, and it's running at 120 BPM. So if I play that, what LightLink is going to do is flash a lighting command for each beat of this metronome. And the order that it goes in is white, red, green, blue. And so what you can do is watch this metronome play and then use your Sync Adjust tool until you can make a visual match between the lighting commands that are being played back and what you're hearing with the metronome. This is a good way to sort of dial in your Sync Adjust to make sure that your lighting commands are being played back at the correct time. Now, if you don't have a Bluetooth audio system, Sync Adjust is probably not necessary. I rarely use it because I'm using a tethered audio 1/8" cable, in which case there just isn't much lag. If there ever is, it's usually around like 50 milliseconds or so, and I can take care of that pretty quickly. This blue window underneath here, that's called the Program Loader, that's primarily used for adding songs that you would like to program from Spotify, and then also adding your lighting programming to be associated with that piece of music from Spotify. I'm not going to cover this right now because we're going to cover this in a future tutorial that you'll see in just a few minutes ahead in this video. Lastly, I'd like to cover this learning library window. This window will be populated with all of the tutorials that I'm going to create for using LightLink. And right now it's populated with some videos that we have on our channel. There's no tutorials in there right now, but simply because I'm filming the first tutorial. But I'm going to film some more tutorials and upload to the learning library. And the purpose of it is that as you go through LightLink and you're going through the workflow, if you have a question or you're unsure about something or you'd like some advice, you should be able to reference it relatively quickly down here in this window and then just click play. So I think at this point we've pretty much covered everything there is to cover in the interface. That was just a brief overview, and you're going to become more familiar with it if you follow along in the subsequent sections of this tutorial as we actually program a song together. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next section. Now that we've had a chance to download and install LightLink and get a brief overview of the user interface, it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. That's right, it's time to program our first song. But wait, before we make any scenes or cues, let's go ahead and open up Audacity and import our MP3 file that we're going to be programming to. Audacity supports drag and drop functionality for MP3s. I always appreciate that. Now, this blue graphic here is what's known as a waveform. The waveform can be a visual representation of the music itself. So what we can do is go ahead and look at the waveform and follow along with the playhead as it scrolls through the music. What we want to do is make a mental note of any dynamic changes in the music, as well as song structure. Listen for the intro, verse, chorus, drop, bridge, outro, etc. I'm going to go ahead and bump the volume down a few dB just so that I can talk and make a commentary as we listen. Okay, so we've got an intro here. Nice and low dynamic.
I'm searching for a key to a door that doesn't exist anymore.
Standard house music kick for the first verse.
I used to keep it there by your picture, but now it's face down on the floor. I'm still living by the words that you
want to zoom in? The hotkey is Control 1.
I'm searching for a key to a door that doesn't exist anymore.
The dynamic drops down here. We get snaps. Okay, it takes us right into the second verse.
Can't seem to find the space where I left it. It used to be here in my drawer. I'm still living by the words that you gave me. I'm trying to forget they were yours. I'm searching for a key to a door that doesn't exist anymore.
Dynamic drops down again. Now the claps are on every quarter note. Feels like we're building towards something here. Feels like we're building towards a drop or a chorus. Double time on the snare. And again. Nice big melodic drop here. Very high dynamic. Opens up nice and wide. We get the vocal hook back. This is going to be one last big chorus to take us home. Great song. All right, no outro, just a nice smooth fade out. Go ahead and stop that. Okay, so now that we have a general overview of the song structure and some of the dynamics, let's go back into LightLink and start thinking about some of the scenes that we want to craft for this particular piece of music. Okay, let's get started making some scenes to accompany this piece of music. Now, I think I remember that the intro of this song has some plucky guitars, so for the scene pattern, go ahead and navigate to the dropdown and select random. I think that's going to match the dynamic pretty nicely here. Now, for the fade on time, I don't want 0 because I like the lights to fade on, but I still want a small number because I want the pop to be relatively dramatic. Let's go ahead and select 75 milliseconds. Now for the dwell on time, let's leave that off. For the fade on time, I want a slightly larger number because I want there to be a nice smooth ramp as the lights fade off. I'm going to go ahead and start with 300 milliseconds and we'll see how that looks. Now for the off color, I don't want the panels to be exactly completely off, so I'm going to use a technique where I select a color, purple here in this case, and I'm going to drag the brightness to about 15 to 20%. Now I'm going to use this off color as a sort of canvas to paint our various animations on throughout the song. Now for the number of colors, I want there to be some degree of variation, so let's bump this up to 5. And go ahead and select a various array of purples at different brightness levels, so long as the brightness is greater than the off color, and that'll make this animation work. Now for the fourth color, I'm going to go ahead and utilize the color picker tool so that I can sample the original hue that we had for our off color. But I'm going to bump the brightness up just a little bit. Now for the fifth color, to add some highlighting, I'm going to go ahead and select a nice vibrant yellow and drag the brightness up to 100%. Flicker factor we can leave off for now. I don't think strobing is going to match the gentle dynamic of this intro. Let's leave no overlap unchecked for a little more variation and animation. And for simultaneous panels, let's start with just one and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tick the play scene trigger. Okay, I actually really like that and I think it's going to work. So let's go ahead and save this scene. Now you can pick your own naming convention, but I think it's important to stay organized. What I like to do is pick the name of the song, underscored, and then followed by whatever portion of the song it is I'm programming. So in this case, it's the intro. Select Save as New. Okay, so we've just made our first scene to accompany the intro of this piece of music. Now, I want to refresh myself because I know we have to do the first verse next, but I can't quite remember how it sounds. So let's go ahead and jump back into Audacity and reference the music. Okay, so we can see this portion here is the intro that we just programmed. And I'm willing to bet just by looking at the waveform here that this is a kick for the first verse. We'll back it up a little bit to get some more context, and let's have a listen.
I'm searching for a key to a door that doesn't exist anymore. I used to keep it there.
Okay, that's right. So we've got a kick drum and a vocal top line. So we have to come up with some sort of scene to match that. Now, I think it could be neat to go from this sort of random twinkling animation to a more uniform and vibrant color wash that's going to really match the punch of this kick. So from the scene pattern dropdown, go ahead and select same. For fade on, I'm thinking 500 milliseconds. Dwell on we can leave off. Fade off, let's leave off. And for dwell off, let's go with 500 milliseconds again. Now for our off color, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the theme that we've got going and use this purple color at around 15 to 20% brightness. But for my on color, I'm going to introduce a hot pink color at 100% brightness. And I'm going to leave the flicker factor off. The dynamic is pretty similar going from intro to first verse. I don't want any strobing or anything crazy. I'm going to go ahead and tick the play scene trigger. Now, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like how abruptly the scene ends, so let's navigate back over to our dwell off and fade off fields, and I think the problem is in this dwell off field. 500 milliseconds is too much. Let's cut it back to 0, and let's put 500 milliseconds in the fade off field, effectively giving us a smoother ramp in the animation. Okay, let's tick the play scene trigger to get a visual representation of the changes that we just made. That's way better. Okay, so let's go ahead and name this keys first verse. And let's go ahead and jump back into Audacity to refresh ourselves. Okay, so just to follow along here, there's our intro. There's our first verse. And again, you can tell just by looking at the waveform, there's some sort of change here. And we're going to have to program a cue to accompany that. Let's back it up before the change just to get some context. And let's have a listen. Okay, so the track sort of drops down in its dynamic. We lose the kick and we add these snaps on 2 and 4. Now, this dynamic is so similar to the intro that I'm actually going to repurpose the intro for this portion of the song. So let's go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. And again, in the waveform, we can see that something else is happening here. Something has changed. I'm willing to bet this is the second verse. So let's have a listen and see if we can come up with something for this portion of the song. Nice. Okay, so the kick comes back in and we get some claps on 2 and 4 and a shaker for the hi-hat. Let's head back into LightLink. Now, at this portion of the song, I think it'd be nice to add some sort of movement. So from the scene pattern drop down, go ahead and select chase. Now in the fade on field, I'm going to leave this value at 0 because I want the chase to happen relatively quickly. Dwell on we can leave at 0. But the fade off time, I want to be absolutely massive so we get a nice long tail to this chase, really dramatic looking. I'm thinking 1200 milliseconds. It might be a little bit too much, but we can always change it really quickly, so I'm not going to worry about it. For the off color, let's go ahead and stick with the theme that we've got going and use this purple at around 15 to 20%. And I'm going to continue the theme of that hot pink as well at 100% brightness at the beginning of the chase. This second box is for the end or the completion of the chase. And I'm going to stick with a hot pink color as well, but I'm going to drag the brightness way down low. So in effect, what's going to happen is the chase will start out very vibrant and bright, and by the time it ends, it should be nice and dim. It'll add a little bit of visual character to the animation. Flicker factor, let's leave at 0. I don't see any reason to introduce strobing at this part of the music because the dynamic is still so smooth and so gentle. I'm going to leave the animation happening in a forwards direction as well. So let's go ahead and tick the play scene marker and see what happens. That's exactly what I was looking for. All right. I'm going to name this Keys Second Verse and save it. Let's go ahead and dive back into Audacity and see what we've got next. Okay, so here's our second verse that we were starting. And it looks like something visually different is happening here. I don't know if there's a little more bass, but I'm going to back it up from here to get some context, and let's play and have a listen.
I'm searching for a key to a door that doesn't exist anymore. Can't seem to find.
Interesting. Okay, so the shaker that was being used as the hi-hat has now stopped along with the claps on 2 and 4, but we brought in this beautiful vocal melody. So you know what? I'm going to stick with the chase that we just made, but let's go ahead and tweak it a little bit to give the viewers something to hold their attention. I'm going to switch the direction from forwards to backwards, and I'm going to switch our second color from this dim purple to the same yellow that we had from our intro. We can create a thematic bridge throughout the song. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. So you can see the chase is now happening in the opposite direction that it was going before. And I think I like this dynamic, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Keys, second verse, underscore 2, because this is the second variation of this chase for the second verse. Let's go ahead and save. Okay, you guessed it, back into Audacity. Let's find out what's happening after this second verse here. So this is all part of the second verse. Something's happening here. Let's have a listen. Again, that dynamic is so similar to the scene that we created for the intro and the previous break. Let's go ahead and make a mental note that we're going to use that same scene here again. And we'll skip ahead a little bit to save time. Something's happening here. Let's go ahead and have a listen. Okay, so the kick pattern is a little more busy, has a little more variation, and it feels like the automation on these synths is starting to open up and build towards something. So I think for this scene, I'd like to build upon the same kind of visual dynamic that we had for the intro. So I'm going to go ahead and create a random scene pattern. Fade on, I'm going to leave it 0 so the lights pop on. Dwell on, I'm going to leave it 0. And for the fade off time, let's go with 300 milliseconds. Very similar to the intro that we made. For the off color, you guessed it, I'm going to go with that dim purple that we have for our canvas. And for the number of colors, I'm going to stick with 1, but I want it to be this very vibrant, bright yellow from the intro. And no flicker yet. I don't want any strobing. This time I'm going to go ahead and tick the no overlap box. So basically what this means is that the previous animation has to start and finish before the next animation starts and finishes itself. Sort of slows things down a little bit. And this is the big change here. For simultaneous panels, I want there to be a little more luminosity in the room to signify that something is coming. Let's go ahead and bump this up to 4. And let's have a look. Now, I don't like that. It's too punchy, and I feel like the animation needs a ramp on and a ramp off. So we already have our ramp off with the 300 millisecond fade off time. Let's go ahead and mirror that for the fade on time and see if this remedies the situation. That's much better in my opinion, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Keys. Builder. Okay, let's jump back into Audacity and see what we've got. Here's the portion we just programmed. Let's have a listen. Okay, so at this point, it's apparent that we're definitely building to some sort of climactic payoff. And the reason I can tell is that the introduction of these snare drum hits on 8th notes is happening. So let's create a scene to go ahead and match that. I'm going to select random again. Now, for the fade on time, I want nothing because I want the lights to pop on and match the attack characteristic of a drum being hit, in this case a snare drum. Now for the fade off time, I'm going to make this 250 milliseconds. That's not an arbitrary number. I cheated a little bit because I'm familiar with this song and its BPM, and I happen to know that an 8th note is roughly 250 milliseconds, so I think this will create a nice visual bridge between the music, what people are hearing, and the visual of what they're seeing. Now for the off color, this time I'm going to change things around and I'm going to make the panels completely dark. And let's change the color to white and drop the simultaneous panels down to 1. And let's have a look. I feel like that matches the snare drum pretty well. You might be thinking to yourself at this point, we've had so much color and so much vibrancy and so much brightness and luminosity. Is it strange to take that color away, take that brightness away? Don't worry about it, because the whole point of the scene that we're making right now is to tee up something awesome, and we're waiting for that big payoff when the chorus or drop is ready to come here next. So I'm going to save this as keys, snare, builder, 1, and I'm going to save as new. Now, I happen to remember from our previous intro that the very next portion is the same exact pattern with the snare, except it's going to double time from 8th notes to 16th notes. So we can go ahead and leave all the parameters the same, but we're going to cut this time in half from 250 to 125 milliseconds. Let's go ahead and have a look just to see. Yep, that's perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and play it in Audacity just so that we can make a match. Okay, that's our first snare builder. Here's the second one. Yeah, that's perfect. And if we go ahead and listen a little bit further, I think we're going to have this one more time. Let's see what happens. Just as I suspected, yes, we will. So let's go ahead and save this scene first. Keys, snare, builder, 2. Okay, let's go ahead and drop this fade off time down to 75 milliseconds and add a flicker factor of 1. I think that's really going to help sell this big climactic drop that we're working towards here. I'm going to tick the play scene trigger. That's about what I was expecting. Let's go ahead and name this Keys, Snare, Builder 3 and save as new. And let's head back to Audacity and see what happens next. So here's the big third part of our snare builder. And then I think just by looking at the waveform, it looks like we're going to have a drop or a chorus here. Let's go ahead and have a listen. Okay, so we've reached the big payoff in the form of this drop here. I think we need something big and bright and colorful to match. And I think that we can actually repurpose a scene that we made before, specifically the Keys' second verse chase and the second variation of that. Just to refresh your memory, here's what that looks like. Now, just to add some visual variation, let's switch the direction from backwards to back and forth and add a flicker factor of 1 to add some strobing. Let's see what this looks like. I think that's perfect. Let's go ahead and name this Keys Drop and save as new. Okay, we're getting really close to being done now. Heading back to Audacity. Okay, so there's our third snare builder section that we programmed, and here's the drop that we just made with that chase scene that we repurposed. And just looking ahead visually, it looks like there's some sort of indication here. Something's changing. I'm going to back up the playhead for some context, and let's have a listen.
I'm searching for a key to a door that doesn't exist anymore. I used to keep it there by your.
Okay, so at this point, the drop or the chorus, depending upon how you want to refer to it, has doubled itself. And we get the big climactic synth top line. We get the big climactic vocal hook as well. For all intents and purposes, this is sort of the last hurrah, the big send-off for this piece of music. So I think that a nice, big, bright, vibrant, uniform color wash is the way to go. From the scene pattern, go ahead and select same N. And let's do a dwell on time of 0 and a fade between of 350 milliseconds. We'll leave the color for the off color as nothing for now, but bump the number of on colors up to 3. Okay, so what LightLink has done here is repopulated in these 2 colors that it remembers from our previous chase scene, which is perfect because I was looking to sample these colors anyways. What I'd like to do here is create a thematic bridge and bring all 3 colors that we've used throughout this song back into play here. Namely this hot pink, this yellow that we introduced in the intro, and then let's go ahead and make this purple that we've been using as the backdrop. And let's go with no flicker factor and see what happens. Okay, I think that's perfect. That's going to match really well. So let's name this Keys Drop _ 2. It's like I've got a typo here. There we go. And I think all that's left at this point is sort of that smooth tail at the end of this song here. Let's go ahead and have a listen to it. So here's the second portion of the drop that we just programmed. And it looks like we don't have an outro. We just have this fade out here. Let's listen. Okay, just a nice smooth fade out with a really big tail on it. So I'm thinking that we can go to a same pattern. And for the on color, let's just make this white. For the fade on time, we want 0. Dwell on 0. Fade off. Remember, the tail of this fade out is absolutely massive. It's like 5 seconds or so. So let's try 5,000 milliseconds. And for a dwell off time, I'm going to go ahead and just enter 5,000 as well. What this will do is make sure that the scene doesn't loop itself at the end. And let's see what we've got here. Okay, that's perfect. Let's go ahead and name this keys fade out and save it. Now, the very last scene that we're going to have to make, now that we've finished listening to all the music, we're going to have to make a scene that we're going to call off, simply off. And this is going to be a same scene, so it affects all the panels at once. We'll make the off color nothing, make the on color nothing. We'll change the fade off time to 0, the dwell off time to 0. And we'll just go ahead and make sure that this is nothing. That's perfect. All we want is a scene to make sure that the panels stay off and that nothing is looping itself. So I'm going to go ahead and save that one as well. Okay, at this point, we have finished making all of the various scenes that are going to go into programming this piece of music. So the only thing left that we have to do is head back to Audacity and add in some labels to make sure that we're cueing all the various scenes that we just made at the right point of the music. So that's going to be the next step in this tutorial. I'll see you over in Audacity. Okay, for the next portion of this tutorial, we're going to be working primarily in Audacity, and we're going to be completing a process called label dropping. It's basically going to add markers throughout the song at the various key transition points and determine where we want LightLink to trigger the lighting scenes that we just created. So at this point, I'd like you to go ahead and open up the clipboard management tool that you downloaded earlier from GoLightLink.com under the resources section. I've got clip here because it's compatible with Windows. Both clipboard management tools that we link to are free, and they're both the same in functionality. It just determines what OS you're running. So since I've got Windows, I've got clip here. And now that clip is running, I'm going to go ahead and minimize it and navigate back to Audacity. Okay, so right away you can see our waveform that we've got here. And what we're going to be doing is dropping labels throughout the song. Namely, I'm going to start with the intro. So I'm going to zoom in here. And the hotkey for that is Control-1. You'll see across the top, you do have clickable zoom tools as well. I like to use hotkeys. It's just a little bit quicker, saves some time. And you want to go ahead and take your mouse and clip right before where you want to drop this label. And the hotkey to drop a label is Control-M. Now, the hotkeys are mappable, so I've changed it for my own personal liking, but Control-M is what's standard. And you'll see that's our first label. It's appeared right underneath the waveform here in our label track. And what we want to go ahead and do is copy and paste the name of the scene that we want to be triggered at that point. So go ahead and navigate back to LightLink. And under the drop down of saved scenes, you'll see all the various scenes that we've created here. And I want the keys intro scene here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this with Control C and navigate back to Audacity. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it in there. Okay, so at this point, we've added our first cue. And what LightLink is going to do, in effect, is read this label and trigger it at the correct time to make sure that it matches up and synchronizes perfectly with the music. Now, if you want to go ahead and open up Clip with your hotkey, you can see it populates uh, your latest text that you've copied. So the reason the clipboard management tool is so useful is that if you plan on adding a bunch of scenes that are similar or the same exact scene throughout the song, it can save you a lot of time by simply copy and pasting the text instead of having to type it in every time. And this is also why the naming convention is so important. The reason I made sure to note which portion of the song I'm programming in the naming convention is because it helps me stay organized when I'm in the process of dropping my labels. Okay, so now that we've dropped the label for the intro, the next portion I want to program is the first verse. Go ahead and zoom in here. And we'll drop a label. Head back to LightLink. And there's our first verse. I'm going to copy that text. And in Audacity, I'll paste it in. And that's the process that we're going to be completing. I'm going to go ahead and drop the remainder of labels that we need for this song. I think I remember here we wanted to repurpose our intro scene. So I'll grab that from LightLink. Okay, and then we've got our second verse here. Let me just listen and make sure. Okay, so I'm glad I listened because it looks like we have a pretty dramatic cut here in the waveform. I was able to see that visually just by looking at it. And what I want to do here is add our off scene that we created. And then we'll pick it back up with the second verse here. And then remember, we made a second variation of the second verse. Let's go ahead and find exactly where we want to trigger that in Audacity.
Can't seem to find
I think I may have jumped the gun here. Back it up.
that doesn't exist anymore. I'm searching for a key.
There it is, right at the turnaround. You can see sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell in the waveform if the song is repetitive or doesn't change much in dynamics. So that's when it's good to have a pair of headphones ready and you can just make sure you know where you're at in the song. Sweep up.
I'm searching for a key.
And right there at the turnaround. Okay, let's go ahead and add our second verse, second variation. Okay, now I think this is our builder scene. Let me listen again real quick. I just want to be sure. Yep, that's exactly it. We've got the claps on every quarter note. We'll drop a label there. And we'll grab that builder scene. There it is. Paste it in. And see all the labels that we've created so far. Now, because so many of our scenes are unique that we're using here, we're not using clip too much. So far, the only scene that we've used more than once has been this keys intro. But if I pull up clip, you'll see it's running in the background. Okay, and here's my latest text that I've copied. And so if I ever want to recall it, it's as easy as just pulling up clip and clicking one of these texts here that I've copied recently. Okay, so we've got our builder. If I remember correctly, I think we've got this snare builder next. Let's go ahead and have a listen. Ooh, no, I'm actually wrong. That's going to be our builder right there. I'm glad I listened so that I caught that. I'm going to pull up clip. There's builder. Perfect. This one, I remember now, I wanted this to be the intro scene. So clip is going to help us out here as well. We'll switch that to keys intro. Perfect. Let's go ahead and have a listen. Okay, there it is. That starts our snare builder right there. I'm going to zoom in and get as specific as I can. You can see the waveform spikes right here. That's going to be our snare drum hit. That's the attack of the snare drum. So let's go find our snare builder. The first one. I will copy that. Paste it in. Zoom out a little bit. And let's go ahead and listen for the second snare builder. Oh, there it is. It just doubled in time from 8th notes to 16th notes. So let's zoom in there. There's the attack. I'll drop a label. We'll navigate back to LightLink. There's our second scene. Copied and pasted. Zoom out. And if you'll recall, we've got one more snare builder we want to paste in here. There it is, the 30-second notes. Let's zoom in there. Here's the spike in the waveform. We can see visually that's the attack of the snare. And we'll copy our third scene. Paste it. Now let's listen for this transition here. Let's make sure. Okay, so you can hear the snare actually drops out right before this build. I'm going to make use of our off scene once again. I'm going to drop a label here. Type off. And then we've got our drop here. Here's the spike in the waveform. That's probably a kick drum if I had to guess. I'll drop a label. And let's recall the scene that we made for the drop. Keys drop. Go ahead and copy that and paste it. Okay. That's right. So that scene's going to run and loop itself for this entire duration. And you can see across the top of the timeline here, you can get a sense of where you're at in the song. This scene starting around 2 minutes and 42 seconds or so. It's going to run all the way to about 3:15. Let's listen for this transition.
I'm searching for a key to a door.
Okay, let's zoom in here. There we go. Find that attack, drop a label. And let's go ahead and find our second drop variation. And we'll copy that. Paste it in. That's going to loop all the way right up until the song fades out. It's going to be right around there. Let's go grab our fade out scene that we made earlier. There it is. And we'll copy and paste. Okay, that's it. We've finished adding all of the labels that we need to program this song. Now you can see as we zoom out, here's all the labels that we created, just a handful. You can get as specific as you'd like, or as general as you want to be as well. I guess this programming is somewhere in between. I've certainly programmed songs before where I have hundreds of labels. If you really want to find every single kick drum and make it as precisely synchronized as possible, you have the freedom to do that if you'd like, or you can simply just add some commands and try to hit the major cues and transitions throughout the music. Okay, the next thing we want to do is export all these labels we just made in Audacity. So navigate up to File, Export, Export Labels. And just remember the location that you're saving this TXT file, because we're going to have to import this into LightLink in just a second. Go ahead and hit save. And the next thing we want to do is navigate to Spotify. And what we're looking for specifically here is the Spotify share link for the song that we've just programmed, which is this one right here. Click the three dots, and we're going to copy this share link to our clipboard. Navigate back to LightLink. And what we want to do is paste that share code in here. Give it a title and an artist. And go ahead and hit add. Now the next thing we want to do is choose file from this field. Here's our TXT that we just exported. Go ahead and hit open. And then LightLink needs to know what song it's going to associate with this TXT file. There's our song, Keys. And next thing is to just hit load program. Now, if we click the Start Watching Spotify button here and navigate back to Spotify, what we can do is play this song. And you'll see LightLink has started playing our very first cue for the intro. And that's all there is to it. Okay, now that we've had a chance to finish programming our very first piece of music together inside LightLink, I thought now would be a good opportunity to cover some tips and tricks that you can use for the next time you decide to program a piece of music. Admittedly, everything that we just did inside the software is more so for the purpose of getting you familiar with the user interface, as well as the process of creating these commands and then dropping the labels inside Audacity along the timeline to make sure that everything synchronizes perfectly. But the next time you decide to program a piece of music, you're going to be the one determining those parameters inside LightLink and not me. And one of the most common questions I get is, how in the world am I supposed to know what kind of scene I should be creating to go along with the music? And I just wanted to take a second to remind you that lighting design is very much a form of art, just like songwriting or video game design, which is fantastic because it means that it's innately very subjective. So the answer to whatever you should be creating is that you should be creating something that you would like to see personally. I know for me personally, that almost always materializes into a very literal interpretation of the music. It's not uncommon for me to get super familiar with a piece of music before I program it, and sometimes I'll pick out little pieces of instrumentation that present themselves in the mix that are compelling to me, and then I try to imagine how that sound might visualize itself as a lighting command. But what you might like might be way more freeform or way more creative, and that's fantastic, so long as whatever you're creating, you're having fun while you're doing it. It's important to remember that the whole point of this is to have fun. And when I look back on all the scenes and all the programming that I've made over the years, the stuff that's most personal and to me and the stuff that I like the most is the stuff I made while I was having a ton of fun. So I can't wait to turn you guys loose on LightLink and see what kinds of amazing stuff you come up with. Please record it and please tag us. And thank you so much for watching this tutorial. And I'll be in the threads on Reddit and on YouTube, every other social media platform. Reach out to me, send me a personal message. I'm super passionate about lighting. I would love to just chat about anything lighting design related. Thank you guys so much for watching and have fun.